Hi everyone, I'm Chelsea Grayson coming to you once again from the office of the CEO. This is my series where I help you be more successful in your careers, or I help you successfully transition to a new career. Today we're going to be talking about my top 10. What do I mean by that? Well, I always advise people to set up a set of fundamental principles to help guide them along their career path. A set of guidelines, as it were, so that to the extent that you hit a place in your career where you're not quite sure what decision to make, you can just go back to your fundamental guiding principles and use them as a default to help get you back on track. So I'm going to tell you today what my top 10 fundamental guiding principles are. Feel free to adopt all of these. Feel free to adopt some or even none of these. But what I do want you to walk away with today is the idea that you do need to adopt a set of fundamental guiding principles for your own career paths. So here it goes. Here's my top 10. So number one, we spend about a third of our lives at work pursuing our careers. And it's become almost cliche at this point to say, well, you should pursue something that you're passionate about, something that inspires you if you're really going to create true generational wealth. And that's all fine and dandy, but realistically, we can't all work at the perfect place that inspires us every single moment of every single day, right? So I've taken a much more practical approach in my career path. And so when I've come to a place that doesn't perfectly inspire me, I've learned how to sort through and pick and choose the things that do inspire me, and then I just focus on those in my career at that place. To the extent I can find those things, obviously. If you can't find those things at all, then you really should switch jobs if you possibly can. So here's an example. So when I got to Jones Day, which was the law firm that I first came to out of law school and where I ultimately made partner in the mergers and acquisitions group, I came to find out that they represented a big gun manufacturer, and they also represented a company in big tobacco. And that's fine. And for some people, that poses no issue. For me, that just wasn't going to sit well within my fundamental personal mores. And so I chose a practice group, and I chose substantive areas in my practice group there that allowed me to steer clear of those clients. So lesson solved. I was working at a big law firm that was really the place that I wanted to make partner, and really a place where I wanted to be an owner ultimately, but I didn't have to worry about representing clients that weren't consistent with my principles. So number two, you should run your career as if it's a public company in the Fortune 100 and you're the CEO and chairperson of that company. And in that regard, you owe fiduciary duties to the shareholders of that company, who are, of course, you and your family. So if you owe fiduciary duties as the CEO and chair of a public company, what's one of the main things you need to do? Well, you need to set up a short and a long-term strategic plan on an annual basis. So this is a 1-year plan, so a plan that looks 1 year out, and also a plan that looks 3 to 5 years out. And these set up the initiatives that you intend to pursue in those periods of time. And they also set up action plans in terms of how you intend to implement those initiatives. And at the end of every period of each plan, whether it's 1 year out or 3 years out or 5 years out, whatever kind of plan you put in place, then you need to look back and you need to judge, how did I do? Did I hit those initiatives? How well did I hit them? Did I not hit them? Was there a point in time where I needed to change those initiatives? Because in the big picture, in the long-term look at my career and at the health of that public company that is my career, those initiatives were no longer consistent with that long-term perspective. And if I did that, then what other initiatives did I put in place in substitute for those initiatives that I let drop by the wayside? Quick tip there, you are allowed to zig and zag in your career. You're allowed to make decisions that alter the path of your career, but don't do it for some sort of immediate reason. You always need to sit back when you're changing an initiative that was in your strategic plan and say, does this fit the long-term goal of my career? Because that is the standard that a board of directors would hold you to if you were the CEO and chair of a big public company. So my number 3 on my top 10 is always have mentors along the way in your career. Mentors are wonderful for a variety of things. So number 1, for substantive advice. So to the extent that you pick a mentor that's in your industry or in your particular profession, they can give you all sorts of incredible substantive advice. You can go to them and sort of knock around a particular concept. You're not going to rely on them to, edit your work all the time or, coach you, with micro details all the time. You don't want to impose that sort of burden on your mentors. But for big, high-level substantive concepts that you're having trouble grasping, or a big high-level argument that you're trying to weigh back and forth, mentors are wonderful for that. Mentors are also exceptional at creating networking opportunities for you. So they've got a whole platinum Rolodex at their disposal because assumedly they're a bit further along in their careers than you are. And when you gain their trust and you show them that you're good at what you do, then they'll open up that world to you and they can be just an incredible networking resource. And they can also help you with the soft factors. This is the third thing that mentors are really good at. So they can talk to you about what organizations you should join, what clubs you should join, and then they can help you get into those organizations. And then much more importantly, they can talk to you about how you act once you're at the events that that organization puts on. Because we can all walk in and see a seminar and then leave. But how is it at the cocktail party after the conference is done that day? What do you wear to a business-oriented cocktail? What sorts of conversations should you get into? What sorts of conversations should you veer away from? Who are the sorts of people that you want to walk around and meet at that cocktail event? This is just one example, of course, but that's the third thing that a mentor can help you with, in terms of kind of what you wear, how you interact at those events, just the soft factors around the edge. And I'll tell you a couple of other things about mentors. One, you should have mentors. You should look for and accept mentors at all stages of your career. So I actually acquired one of my mentors only about 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago at this point. I'm 48, so probably around the age of 43. I adopted a wonderful woman named Colleen Brown who had recruited me to be the general counsel at American Apparel. She sat on the board there. She was the chairman of the board. Ultimately, I proved my chops with her, and once I sold American Apparel, I told her that I wanted to sit on boards as the next chapter in my career. And not only did she guide me in terms of how to rewrite my CV to be appropriate for board membership, she also introduced me around. She helped me get on a board, and she actually put me on the advisory board of the company that she's the CEO of. And she's just continued to be a marvelous mentor for me. And you might think that a 43 or 48-year-old person doesn't need a mentor. No, absolutely. I use her as a guidepost on a lot of different things. So always be looking out for and feel flexible enough. Put your ego aside in order to adopt mentors, even in late stages of your career. And I'll also say this as a final word on on mentors. You might look for a mentor that's exactly like you because you might think, and you're very right about this, you definitely want to have mentors that are just like you because they can understand what you're going through. They've been through it already and they can give you advice from the trenches. But you also want to adopt mentors that are totally different from you. Because those are the folks that actually have the key to certain doors that you might not even know exist. And they might have a totally different perspective on something that you're going to want, that you might not even be aware that perspective exists. So always be sure to have extreme diversity in the group of mentors that you put together for yourself. So number 4 on my top 10 is when you get to a place, when you take a new job, or even if you've been sitting at the same job for a while, try and get the organization chart of that company and try to understand who the decision makers are on that chart. So an organization chart shows from the CEO, really from the board and the chair, down to the CEO and the whole C-suite, and then down from there, who all the people are that run and work at that company. And why would you want to do that? You'd want to find out who all the decision makers are at that company and which decision makers have specific decision-making authority over your career at that company, right? So you know who your immediate boss is, who's your boss's boss, who's the committee that runs your performance evaluations every year, who decides who gets raises, who decides who gets promotions and bonuses, right? Who decides how how the structure is going to look from year to year. It should be obvious to you why you want to know all of that, but lots of people either don't know to ask or are too intimidated to ask about that structure. The reason why you want to understand that structure, of course, and with all due respect to your immediate boss, and you always need to give that person total deference, you should try to start to get to know all of the people in that decision-making structure, right? Because they have decision over your fate and your immediate career at that organization. So understand who those people are, see if you can get to know them a little bit, understand what makes them tick, and you'll have a little bit more of a proactive stance in the shaping of your career at that organization. And along those lines, so my number 5 of my top 10 is, with those people, consistently message your goals from day one. This is kind of the flip side of the coin where people say to you, if you don't ask for it, you'll never get it. and what's the harm in asking for it? You need to constantly sort of state your goals in order to manifest them. This is exactly that concept, but this is about vocalizing your goals, vocalizing where you want to be to the decision makers in your current organization. You tell them about it in your performance evaluation. That's a start. And then you can talk to them about it at other events that you might cross paths with them at or see them at, right? And you have to figure out context by context, how's the appropriate way to consistently reinforce what your goal is. But once you tell them what your goal is, so for example, at my law firm, I consistently told people my goal is to make equity partner at this law firm. Once you tell them that, now you've made them a part of your journey. In some ways, you've made them almost responsible for your journey because now they've heard it. And to the extent they do something inconsistent with what your goals are at that organization, now they're actively working against you. And most human beings aren't going to do that, right? And most people, once they feel like they've got some sort of ownership in your career path at that organization, are at one point or another going to try to take part in helping you actively reach your goal. And one thing's for sure, if you consistently message your goals, particularly on the record at a performance evaluation, they can never say that they were unclear, that you were wishy-washy, that you weren't proactively managing your career. So that's one way they can never use to say, well, that's why you didn't make partner here because we didn't see your passion for this organization, or we didn't understand that's what you wanted for your career path here. So consistently message your goals at an organization. So number 6, be indispensable at your organization. That's not as hard as it sounds, although it is tricky, right? And you need to figure out what indispensable niche you're going to fill at that particular organization. I'm going to give you an anecdote that'll explain this concept a little bit easier. So once again, this is going back to my law firm. So when I was about a 5th or a 6th year lawyer there, I knew, and I'd been telling people for years, I want to make partner at this law firm. But I went to the head of the mergers and acquisitions practice. He didn't sit in my office. He sat in the Midwest. And I said to him, look, in about 4 years, I'm going to be up for partner if you look at sort of what the normal track is at this law firm. And I'd like to know what I need to start doing now to continue to stay on track and to stay at the top of your list in terms of your choice for who's going to make partner in your group at this law firm. And he said to me, well, Chelsea, it's very simple. You need to fill an indispensable niche here, whatever that may be. Is it a substantive area? Is it, a particular client that you work with? Whatever the case may be, it needs to be so that when it comes time to whether we're going to make you a partner here or not, the answer is, if we don't make her a partner, she will leave and we will be unable to do X, Y, or Z. So that's exactly what I did. For me, if you guys want to know, it was very specific. There were hardly any women, probably no women at that time at the firm that were doing big public M&A deals, certainly not on the West Coast. And so they definitely needed that. They needed more women in the boardroom because there were more and more women that were rising to the highest ranks of our clients. And they certainly wanted to see women at the law firm that they could interact with on a daily basis. Moreover, I had clients out on the West Coast that folks in the Midwest and on the East Coast just couldn't tend to as well as I could. So I filled a couple of different indispensable niches at my law firm. So number 7 on my list, assume everyone you interact with can open a door for you. So always assume that you're on a job interview. Always assume that later on someone is going to look back at all the interactions they've had with you and decide whether or not to put you up for a particular opportunity or whether never even to consider you for that opportunity. So here's a recent example. So after I sold American Apparel and I decided to sit on boards as my career, this is before I took the CEO seat at True Religion. So in that interim period, I was introduced to a number of folks who just wanted my advice on their career paths. And one of the folks that I was introduced to was a person who had been a career-long general counsel. He had bounced around to a couple of different companies and happened to find himself in between jobs. And we were introduced by a mutual friend, and we sort of sat down for a couple of times, and I went over his resume and helped him polish it a little bit. We talked a little bit about what companies were looking for now in terms of general counsels. I helped connect him with a couple of folks in my network who I thought were at companies that might be looking to fill their general counsel positions. And we just continued to stay in touch. Ultimately, I took the CEO job at True Religion and was very busy with that when about a year later, I got a call from this guy and he said, well, hey, A, I wanted to thank you for all of the advice that you gave me. And B, I wanted to let you know that I've landed a job as general counsel at a big public company. I said, oh, that's wonderful. Congratulations. I'm so happy that you've kept in touch and let me know that. And he said, okay, but not so fast. He said, they were about to go public. They weren't yet public. He said, we're about to go public and we need to put together a new board of directors for when we become public. So a set of professional directors. And he said, and I'd like to recommend to my CEO that he reach out to you and interview you to sit on the board of directors once we go public. And he said, because you and I had so many wonderful conversations, you really helped me along, and I really got to know you and understand how great you would be on a board of directors, particularly sitting in management at a company where you would be on the board. And so ultimately I did. I got introduced to his CEO, and we had a series of conversations. And to this day, I sit on that board of directors, and it's been a wonderful experience. And of course, it's always an honor to sit on the board of directors of a big public company. And I achieved that because of the interactions that I'd had with this guy over the course of a year and a half before he ever even reached out with this opportunity. So number 8, always stretch in your career. Never become comfortable. The minute you become comfortable, that's when you should start to be uncomfortable. In fact, I want you guys to start being comfortable when you're uncomfortable. It's just like when you're at the gym. If you're not constantly working past your limit, if you're not constantly stretching, if you're not constantly feeling a little bit sore after a workout, then you're not building new muscle, you're not burning fat, you're really not accomplishing much at the gym, you're just remaining status quo. It's the same thing with this muscle, and it's the same thing with your career. So constantly be stretching. The minute you find yourself just sort of sitting at your desk saying, wow, this is great, I'm finally here and I can take a little bit of a rest day, forget it. Get up out of your seat, go take a meeting, go scare yourself with something. Become comfortable with being uncomfortable. So number 9, in every situation, speak up. I saw a statistic, a really scary statistic that said that if you go through 2 meetings and don't say anything, then by the 3rd meeting, when you finally do speak up, nobody will validate what you're saying because they've become used to you not saying anything and they almost won't hear you speaking up. So be sure and speak up. Always think before you speak, of course, but be sure to always speak up and have a point of view. You can do it. I know that you guys have all been in meetings where you haven't said anything because you're feeling a little bit awkward about speaking up, and then 5 people start saying exactly the things that were swirling around in your head, and I bet they aren't saying them as well as you could have said them, and I know that's what you're thinking. So speak up, guys. You're just as valid as everybody else sitting around that table. And finally, number 10, and I can't stress the importance of this enough, develop a firm, strong handshake. And especially to you women, don't let the men give you the limp fish handshake where it's sort of half the hand and they're not really giving you the full hand. Everybody, all of you guys out there, develop a firm, strong, all hands in handshake. That is going to set the tone for every meeting you take that starts with a handshake. People, whether they know it or not, are going to be judging you on that. It's not about crushing the person's hand or establishing some sort of alpha. It's just showing them that you're strong and that's the way that you intend to set the tone for this coming meeting. I'm going to give you 2 bonus points and then I'll let you guys go. So 1, always be honorable in everything that you do. Honor means different things to different people. So you can take this word to be ethical, you can take it to be moral, you can take it to be highly principled. Just be honorable, guys. Always resort to that as a default. It takes 30 years to establish a reputation and just 5 seconds to totally destroy your reputation. And the quickest way to destroy your reputation is to act without honor. So act with honor in every situation. And then finally, guys, when you get to a place where you're successful, where you get to a place where you can where you have enough seasoning and you can impart a little bit of wisdom, be sure and pay it forward. Please pay it forward. So always when you get to a place in your career, if somebody's reaching out to you to ask you to be their mentor, or they're asking you for advice on the sort of fundamental principles that they need to establish in their career paths, and they want to know what yours are, give it to them. Be a mentor. Lend your time, lend your ear, lend your advice. Please pay it forward. So that's it. That's my top 10. I'd be really interested in hearing what your top 10 are. So go ahead and drop it in the comments. Be sure to click the link in my bio on Instagram, or be sure to come back to this channel, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss any future episodes. And I will see you next time from the office of the CEO. Thank you.